Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. We have 4 stories for you today. Let's start with the warm-up one. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. We want you to work off the clock. So I work for a mom-and-pop pizza place. I've been there about 3 months. I generally show up about 20 minutes early every day, and I'm asked to start working right away. I'm always willing, but I clock in first. About 2 weeks ago, the owners asked why I always clocked in early. I told them that I'm asked to work when I get there. They told me I can't clock in early and to just work off the clock for that time, and that they were going to change my time card to reflect what time I was supposed to start. Keep in mind, all of my coworkers have gotten used to me getting there early, so sometimes they leave early. The next day, I was scheduled to work at 5. As per normal, the day crew expecting me to be there early, and work had 3 to 4 people clock off at 4:30. Since I was told that I wouldn't get paid, I decided to show up at 4:59 and clocked in right at 5. In the half hour that those people were off, $200 worth of food was ordered. And our second story. My grandma complied with her husband's request for over 50 years, much to his chagrin. So this is my grandmother's story. My family's been telling this tale for decades. Grandpa himself told it to his daughter's fiancé as a lesson in not underestimating his new bride. Grandma told it slightly differently to my mom when she and my father were engaged. This is something between the 2 versions. It's a lesson in be careful what you wish for, as you might get it. Personally, I've always thought that it was hilarious. My grandparents were very old school. Grandpa got a job working for John Deere as a teen and worked his way up the ladder to foreman, then manager. Grandma was a typical housewife in the 1950s and was held to typical housewife standards. She was to cook and clean and be prepared to entertain Grandpa's business associates at a moment's notice. It was her job to make sure the children were taken care of and never got in her husband's way. She was expected to have dinner on the table at 5:30 sharp when he got home from work. Her house and herself were to be impeccably kept at all times, etc. They were progressive and well off enough that Grandma had her own car. She was expected to use it to run the household errands and take the 4 kids to appointments and such. It was important that her husband not be bothered with such things. The household and family were her responsibility. He had a job. Well, one day Grandpa arrived home from work, and not only was dinner not on the table, but Grandma wasn't even there. The kids, teens at the time, hadn't been fed. Their homework was still on the kitchen table. There were unwashed dishes in the sink, and a dozen other little chores hadn't been done yet. Most importantly, Grandpa was inconvenienced. He'd been home just long enough to let his frustration stew into anger when Grandma's car pulled into the drive. He began shouting at her before she'd even had the chance to set down her purse or take off her jacket. He ranted about all the things she hadn't done because she was out running around when she should have been home taking care of the house and making his dinner. He worked very hard all day to provide for his family. Was it too much to ask for a hot dinner when he got home? She'd had a very good reason for not being home, but he never let her tell it, accepting no excuses. But she was a good wife, so she intended to let him vent for a while. Then she would serve him supper and explain what had gone wrong. Then Grandpa screwed up. As sometimes happens when we speak in anger, he began to blame the wrong thing for his irritation. He began to blame the car and her access to it. He said something to the effect of, "You don't have any business out driving around anyway. You should be home. I never should have let you start driving in the first place. Women shouldn't drive." "You don't want me to drive?" Grandma asked calmly, retrieving her keys from her purse. "Fine, then I won't drive ever again." And she set those car keys on the counter, put her things away, and served dinner. And bless her heart, Grandma stuck with that declaration no matter how much more difficult it made life. Grandpa had to take afternoons off in the middle of the week when the teacher scheduled a meeting. He didn't get a moment's peace on the weekends between grocery trips and taking kids to activities or doctor's appointments or haircuts or clothes. He had to drive Grandma to every Saturday salon appointment. Previously, Grandma had taken herself and the kids to church, letting him sleep. Now he had to wake up early on Sundays and take them all himself. Grandpa was nearly as stubborn as his wife. He held out, expecting her to apologize and ask for her keys back. She never did. Instead, she simply rearranged the household schedule so that he could handle all the driving. Months later, after never getting a single weekend to relax, after having dinner pushed back nearly every day because he had to drive someone someplace, he finally gave in and apologized. He tried to tell her that he was wrong and that she should start driving again. He tried to tell her that he now appreciated all she did to make his life easier. He all but begged her to take those keys. I suspect Grandma had always disliked driving because she never did take back those keys. Nothing Grandpa said or did could convince her to get back behind the wheel. He'd said she had no business driving a car, and she was going to hold him to that declaration no matter what. For over 50 years, until the day she died, Grandma never drove a car again for any reason. Not after the kids graduated and moved out, not after Grandpa retired. Even after Grandpa's death in the 80s, she still refused because my husband always said that women shouldn't drive. Piecing things together long after the fact, the entire family's pretty sure Grandma never liked to drive. She was less than 5 feet tall, a tiny woman to be sure. Don't forget how cars were built in the 40s and 50s. Grandpa had initially pushed her to get a license, and he bought her a car. Many women of that era never drove or only learned to drive very late in life when cars got easier to handle. The level of petty we all aspire to be. And our third story. Cut all my hours? Enjoy your shift. I was a barista at America's favorite mermaid logo caffeine hellhole for about 6 months. My manager was the worst, and it was my first experience having real conflict with authority. I'm usually a real butt kisser if I need to be. The problem began my first week of work. At my interview, in June, I told her I had a 14-day trip already booked for September, and I understood that if that was unacceptable, as I was happy to reapply after. Nope, she said this was no problem and offered me the job. Of course, when I put the days on the calendar, she freaked out, told me it was against company policy, and when I reminded her that we discussed it during my interview, she seemed to remember, but kept mumbling about company policy and how I shouldn't try pulling this again. You know, a great way to start a new job. So the crap storm began. I was accused of giving away free drinks. I asked her to pull up the CCTV and show me or provide any sort of proof on my ID login. She wouldn't, but gave me another vague warning. I was assigned random weird tasks that no one else got, like getting on a step stool to clean the ceiling in the employee area. Because my manager could see mocha on the ceiling, which looked strangely like water stains and nothing like mocha, she would text me with very off-the-cuff accusations frequently, and I was PO'd that I was using my unpaid personal hours to handle her. The worst was cutting hours. I was hired on for 15 to 20 hours a week and had several weeks of single-shift, 4-hour schedules. I asked my manager about it, and she complained about the new labor laws. She had to cut labor, and there was nothing either of us could do about it. Okay, solid. The money was the only reason I was still there. Time to GTFO. By now it's late December, and I was across the country visiting my family for the holidays. I had another single-shift week to look forward to, 12 to 4 on January 2nd. Naturally, I'm still on the other side of the country on the 2nd with no intention of doing anything about it. I waited until about 11 to call her. Me. Hi, manager. Just wanted to let you know I found another job and won't be returning to Moondollars. Manager. Are you giving your 2 weeks or not coming in at all? Me. Not at all. I'm quitting now. Sorry, new job's asking me to come in and fill out paperwork today. And you know I need the hours. It's just labor. Manager. If you quit without notice, you can never work at Moondollars again. I actually laughed out loud at that. I have no intention of working at Moondollars ever again. Okay, bye. And I hung up. The petty of this revenge is in the labor laws. Manager drilled it into us that she couldn't request or force baristas to pick up other shifts anymore, thanks to the new laws. If anyone called out and no one volunteered to cover it, it'd mean she had to come in and work a barista shift. And I don't know many people who would volunteer to commute into Lower Manhattan the day after New Year's for a 4-hour afternoon shift. Hope she enjoyed, and remembered to make the moment. Should have come in as a customer just to see how the shift went. And our last story. You want to ruin an old man's life? Say goodbye to your business. This is a story I heard from a friend of mine. It's about an old man who appreciated the quiet in his cabin on the edge of the forest. So an old man named Chad lived in a little house on the edge of the woods in a small town along the highway to the big city. It could have been called a suburb of the big city if it didn't have its own mayor. So historically, we have a very well-developed corruption of the powerful in this country, and this will affect the continuation of history. The old man had been in the military all his life and preferred to spend his retirement at his home by the woods, going fishing, hunting, or just relaxing by the forest while tending his territory. This went on for quite some time until Mr. Patrick bought a piece of land nearby. He wanted to build a cafe with a huge summer terrace overlooking the forest. And in principle, there wouldn't have been any problem if the area wasn't considered farmland and no commercial buildings could ever be built there. But Patrick didn't care. Chad tried several times to file a complaint, but there was no result. Suddenly, it turned out that Patrick didn't care about the law because he was related to the mayor. In the meantime, a cafe was built and began to fill up with people coming from the big city and from the local town to relax near the forest. Since Chad had no relatives at City Hall, he decided to act within the law. He also began the building process. He built a huge paddock adjacent to the fence of Patrick's cafe. Then, one fine summer day, when the cafe was in full swing and the summer terrace by the forest was almost fully occupied, trucks full of Chad's secret weapon began pulling up to Chad's house. Old Chad had been thrifty enough all his life and had amassed enough money during his service to pass it on to his children. But he certainly didn't feel sorry for the money to protect his private property and his peace of mind. So he decided to spend some money on a little military trickery. Chad bought 32 pigs and launched them into a pen next to Patrick's cafe. The smell of pigs over the couple of days they were in the pen created an incomparable aroma on Patrick's terrace, which in turn somehow had a great effect on the clientele. Every day there were fewer and fewer customers. Patrick tried to offer the old man money, but if you've ever interacted with old military men, you probably know what the response was. The cafe suddenly became, to put it mildly, not exactly profitable. And after a few months, Patrick had to close. And Chad gradually sold all the pigs and went back to his old life. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.